Welcome, everyone, to Assembly Judiciary. Welcome to those here in Carson City, those watching online. We will go ahead and ask you to turn off the volume on any of your devices. Secretary, please take the roll.
Assemblywoman Bilbray-Axelrod. Here. Assemblywoman Cohen. Here. Assemblywoman Considine. Assemblywoman Gallant. Here. Assemblyman Gray. Here. Assemblywoman Hanson. Here. Assemblywoman Hardy. Here. Assemblywoman LaRue Hatch. Here. Assemblywoman Marzola. Assemblywoman Mosca. Here. Assemblywoman Newby. Here. Assemblyman Ortlicker. Here. Assemblywoman Summers Armstrong. Assemblyman Urick. Here. Chair Miller.
Here. And with that, will you mark Vice Chair Marzola present when she arrives? With this, everyone knows that we are on moving quickly through the process right now, so I'm going to open the hearing on Senate Bill 395. Senator Neal, thank you so much for coming up. I know that Senate is going into floor and such as well, so we will try to make this as swift as possible for you. Senate Bill 395 revises provisions relating to real property. Senator, are you presenting on your own?
Yes.
Okay. All right, your hearing is open. Please proceed.
Okay, good afternoon. Senate Committee of Judiciary, not Senate, Assembly Committee of Judiciary. So basically 395 does two things. The public policy goal was to limit the aggregate purchases of investors and corporations in Nevada because we have had a housing crisis where regular homeowners have had to compete with corporate owners in order to buy homes. The second part of the bill creates a registration through the Securities Division, which I worked with the Secretary of State, realtors, builders over the summer to come up with this particular piece of legislation. So the registration basically says you must register with the Secretary of State Securities Division, and then when you go and file, record, your deed must match what you record at the Secretary of State's office. Also, it adds a provision within the deed, because normally on a deed you don't have an investor piece, so then it adds an investor to become a part of the actual deed. And the whole purpose is so we can know and figure out who's playing. We know who's playing, but we also want be able to identify how many are here, and then make sure that the aggregate number is met, which will be checked by the Securities Division. And with that, I'll open myself up for questions.
I do have a question. The first one is coming from, let's see, Assemblyman Urick.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Senator, for answering our questions today on this really quick read of the bill. I'm trying to understand, so it sounds like what you just said is an effort to stop these large LLCs or corporations coming in as investment groups and overwhelming our residential. My concern is, I did a look at the bill here and read it, is it looks like it would include small, like not large investors either. So I guess if I could phrase it, like I own an LLC that owns some residential property. I don't do massive, nowhere near close to 1,000 units. But it looks like this would mandate that I also have to register with this Securities Division, pay the fees and all of that. Is your intent to capture somebody like me in this bill?
Senator Neal, for the record, no. And I know we had an exclusion of if it was a family trust company, and then that's pretty much the only exclusion unless it's a housing authority defined property. And so we know who we're going after, right? So there are certain SEC filings where they're larger corporate investors, and so the intent is not to go after the mom and pops, but if they're in the registry, then it's just going to be the data, but that's not who we're going after, and that's not who we've been focused on. The reason why I didn't do an exhaustive list of what is a 501c6 or 501c7 is because I would have had a really long list.
Very quickly.
Thank you, Chair. And so it sounds like what your intentions are. I'm not even opposed to that, but my concern is as drafted, it might include the mom pops. And, specifically it references an LLC in section 8B, and it references 86061, which I know is just regular LLCs. And then if you go back to subsection 4, it basically says any entity LLC, which would be incorporated that, somebody like me, has to register with the division before purchasing any unit of residential property. But then also in subsection 3, it talks about even just owning residential property. So I think that as it's drafted, it's probably going to grab in, and I would encourage you to consider maybe narrowing that if that is not your intent.
So Senator Neal, for the record, so the Securities Division, so we're only looking at who is intending on purchasing after the effective date. Okay, whatever's the will of this committee. It's deadline day tomorrow. But ultimately, that's not who we were looking at or who we intended to capture. We went over and over at the Securities Division, and there's only certain particular companies who were interested, who are doing mass aggregate purchases. So that's the intent.
Thank you. Our next question is from Assemblywoman Gallant.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Senator, for bringing this forward. I almost feel like this could be a possible answer to Assemblywoman Constantine's bill that she put forth in revenue that would require REITs to be part of the commerce tax, because we are having issues with REITs and pushing out that middle-class home ownership. My concerns, I will also ditto with Assemblyman Urick, because LLCs are a way that we protect our investments, right? So if there's something that we can do to make sure those mom and pops are not included, I would be interested in that. Georgia and Hawaii have done something like this as well. And I don't know, my question is if you have looked at what they have done and seen if they do exclude that mom and pop, and then maybe they've got some wording that would be quick and easy.
So Senator Neal, for the record, I looked at several states that have done some form of limiting investor purchases, foreign investor tax, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. I have read the research about the mom and pops and the market share around mom and pops, so I actually understand that. I don't have a problem with, and I don't know what the timeline on turning something around with saying, I don't know what the language is to exclude a mom and pop, because they're not defined in statute. They're not defined anywhere. And so the only way is to limit is a similar language that I had in my another housing bill, where if your ownership was less than 5 dwellings, then that group will be excluded. So there's this under, right? Because I don't know how many properties, because typically mom and pops are doing it as an investment strategy in order to build wealth, right? So there might be, 3 or 4 properties, or maybe even 5. And so what I put in another bill was a cap that if you fell below this threshold of 5 owned, didn't apply to you.
I'm going to actually ask you to take it offline, because floor is starting and we want to get the senator back. Thank you. And I know the senator's always available to answer questions. So we'll move to the next question, which will be from Assemblywoman LaRue Hatch. Do you still have your question?
Thank you, Chair, and thank you for being here today and bringing what I think is a really critical bill to address an issue in our communities. I just wanted to ask, do you have numbers for how many, or approximately how many units are currently being bought by corporations and causing these housing issues?
Thank you for the question. I didn't bring the PowerPoint over here. So I worked with UNLV, so let me do the caveat. Sean McCoy is an actual researcher at the lead UNLV real estate school. He gave me research, but it's his own research. He is not speaking on behalf of the lead group. I didn't load this into the exhibits because the bill just moved yesterday. So we actually looked at the data and looked at the aggregate number of how many have actually been purchased, and it's well over 1,000. It's I think he had a number of, I have to pull that up or I can send it to you. But I know that the number was well over at least maybe 10,000 units because there was a certain point in the market. So you have to think about, like, there's a certain point in the market where in 2007, right, we hit a market swoop where we were competing and doing foreclosures. But that was because of the bad mortgages, right? And then we have this second wave that's happening because basically you had low interest rates, investors could come in and buy swaths of property, and then regular middle class homeowners were competing with the corporate investors who were coming in and paying cash. I looked at that research, which I'll have to share with you because I don't think I can pull that up right now, which was to show that I needed to figure out what was the number, right? Initially in the bill, I had like 100, right? But knowing that we're in the lull of the market, right? We're not in that space where it's getting heated. I wanted to at least have this provision for the next peak. Because depending on where you are, depending on which county you're in, this could be a very different aggregate number, but I needed to start somewhere because this is new. This is not a new policy. So if I talk about 10,000, what does that mean in an area where you only have 10,000 available units, right? What does that mean when you only have 9,000 available units? And families are seeking to compete for that number. So I just went with 1,000 because it just seemed like it's not too much, but not too little.
Thank you so much for that, Senator. And that concludes our questions right now. So we will go ahead and move into testimony. So if there's anyone here in Carson City that would like to come forward and support Senate Bill 395? Not seeing anyone. Broadcasting, is there anyone on the line?
There are no callers at this time.
Thank you so much. I will open it up for testimony in opposition of Senate Bill 395.
Good afternoon, Chair Miller, members of the committee. My name is Matt Morris on behalf of the Nevada Registered Agents Association. We are respectfully opposed to the bill, mostly because of the language being what we perceive to be overly broad, and we're worried about unintended consequences and the fee and registration provisions capturing entities that are not intended to be captured. So we appreciate the intent of the sponsor. We're happy to work with the sponsor on an amendment and try to get down here with not much notice, so apologies for that, but thank you very much.
Thank you so much. And again, we know the way the time and the schedules work at this point, so we apologize for our short notice as well. Anyone else in neutral? I'm sorry, in opposition? Broadcasting, will you open the lines for anyone in opposition?
There are no callers at this time.
Thank you. Then I will open up for neutral. Is there anyone in neutral? Not seeing anyone here in Carson City. Broadcasting, is there anyone on the line?
There are no callers at this time.
Thank you so much. Senator, do you have any closing remarks?
Thank you for hearing the bill. I just sent to Assemblywoman LaRue Hatch the investor data summary from Mr. McCoy. She can share it with the rest of the committee. I have not heard from the whoever came up and opposed, so I'll figure that out. But there's not a lot of time, so what I can do is at least do the mom and pop exemption. We know specifically that the intent of this from the Securities Division is only those particular folks that are actually going around purchasing properties in large amounts.
Thank you so much, Senator. And with that, I will go ahead and close the hearing on Senate Bill 395. Next, we will go ahead into a work session for Senate Bill 395. I will have Ms. Diane Thornton, our policy analyst, walk us through. Okay, folks, change of plans. As you know, we are not going to work session it right now just because we're waiting for a definitive definition of what the senator spoke on. So with that, I will go ahead and open up for public comment. Is there anyone here in Carson City that would like to make public comment? If not seeing anyone for public comment, we will go ahead and go into recess. So at some point today, we will probably meet behind the bar. Thank you, members.